Good morning, and welcome to today's Dream to Travel Forum. We apologize for the late start, just had some technical difficulties on our end here. But thank you for joining us on today's forum. Today we'll be focusing on this week's theme of well-being. And of course, we are working with destination partner for the third week of the festival, the Nepal Tourism Board. As we are talking about well-being, the travel and tourism industry has both a legal and moral obligation to ensure the well-being of the safety of the traveler and the local communities we affect. That's why this week we'll be taking a look at well-being, and we will highlight how the industry can strengthen the well-being of both all stakeholders and, of course, the traveler and the local communities we affect. First, let me introduce myself as we jump in here. My name is Paul Brancan. I am the Director of Communications and External Affairs at the Pacific Asia Travel Association. I will be your host for today's session. We have a great program ahead of us today. So before I jump to that, I do have just a couple of notes. I know many of you are familiar with Zoom, but for those of you who aren't familiar, as you can see at the bottom of your screen, there's two functions. There's a Q&A function and the chat function. For the chat function, please use this tool to introduce yourself to other participants. You can engage and say where you're from, or you can talk privately with one another or with the panelists. However, please don't submit any questions to the panelists using this function. There's a Q&A function. So any questions you might have during this session, please use the Q&A function. I'm not sure if the raise hand function is available on our right now, but if it is, don't raise your hand. You just either send a chat or use the Q&A. And I'll just quickly run through the agenda. First, we'll have some opening remarks from Pata, and then they'll be followed by welcome remarks from the Minister of Culture and Tourism and Civil Aviation from the Government of Nepal. We'll then have a fireside chat between Carmen Roberts from BBC's The Travel Show and the CEO of Nepal Tourism Board. Then we'll follow up with a panel discussion on ensuring well-being. And without further ado, we'll get right to our opening remarks. And with that, I would like to invite PATA CEO, Dr. Mario Hardy, to say a few remarks. Dr. Mario.
Thank you, Paul. Namaste, everyone. Great pleasure to be here, to be with you today for the third week of the Dream to Travel Festival, and would like to actually thank the Nepal Tourism Board for their great support to actually host this week's activities and experiences. I hope many of you actually joined yesterday the cooking lessons to learn to cook some momos. I certainly had them for dinner yesterday and truly enjoyed it, and I actually missed traveling to Nepal. Theme of this week is actually well-being, and I think this is actually very appropriate considering that actually Nepal was amongst one of the first countries to showcase how they actually took care not only of their citizens, but of the many tourists that actually got stranded into Nepal during the lockdown period. And many stories were shared on social medias and trade medias also about how well actually Nepal did in taking care of the people who actually were stayed behind. They treated them as family members, and this is a great story and a great way to actually talk about not only well-being of the citizens, the travelers, but the entire community in general. So I look forward to today's session, and again, thank you very much for joining us. I'll hand over back to actually Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. So we've heard from Mario, and now let's move right along to our welcome remarks from the Honorable Minister Yogesh Bhattari. He's the Minister for Culture, Tourism, and Civil Aviation from the Government of Nepal. He won't be able to be live with us, but we do have a message that we would like to play for you now. So without further ado, I will.
Speaker and panelist, good afternoon and namaste from Nepal. On behalf of Government of Nepal, and on my own. I thank PATA International for organizing this webinar and for inviting me as a speaker. I acknowledge and appreciate PATA for their great support and cooperation in Nepal's tourism revival in the post-earthquake 2015. Today, we all are in the middle of global crisis of COVID-19. Every nation is taking all possible measures to contain it, to stop its spread and to open economy in a calculated manner. We all know it is difficult to predict when we will come to normality, though some countries and universities are moving ahead to a positive direction of developing anti-COVID vaccine. There is, again, another school of thought that we have to live with coronavirus and defeat it as we cannot afford to wait for the availability of full-fledged medicine against the disease. Therefore, now we are living at the juncture of uncertainties. Nevertheless, we must do something at the same time and keep our economics going and the businesses moving. Among other sectors, tourism and aviation are the most affected ones. Countries with priority of tourism are expressing bigger damage on their economics and livelihoods. Though tourism contributes around 3% of Nepal's economy, it carries an ambitious dream of socio-economic prosperity, employment generation, and inclusive development. It has huge potential for that, thanks to all renowned nature and culture, treasure, and people of Nepal. Today, I am happy to share with you that Nepal has taken all safety measures and strictly followed WHO guidelines to protect its people from COVID infection. Government of Nepal has provided absolutely prioritized medical facilities to COVID-infected patients. As a result, we have very less fatalities, that is 34 deaths, around 16,000 infections, while more than 9,000 have already recovered. It comes around 0.22% death. We are optimistic that we will be able to keep the infection under control and open our economics with the utmost caution. We have launched safety and hygienic protocol to be mandatorily followed by the tourism and hospitality and aviation sector. In the protocol, we have noted even the most insignificant issue and have directed all stakeholders to follow them. We have also formed supervision modality to check if all guidelines have been followed or not. Now, we have called for survival, then to revival, for the arrival of the guests. Dear speakers and panelists, the post-COVID tourism landscape is certainly different and develops with the new requirements and taste of the travelers. Safety and hygienic will be the first precondition for any travel. At the same time, our marketing strategy will change and destination need additional features ensuring safety, cleanliness, and social distancing. Keeping destination less crowd is a big challenge, but we have to work for it. I believe nature, adventure, yoga, wellness, meditation can be again popular activities which Nepal can offer to the international travelers. To keep our tourism business survive, we are promoting domestic tourism, which has been common cause for most of the countries. We are planning to open our tourism and aviation sector in early September this year if the situation remains under control as of now. Every challenges bring opportunity. We hope this will also bring new avenues in the sector in the new normal scenario. For this, we have to share our experiences and work together. Successes of destination for failure or another ultimately affect the entire tourism fraternity. Our collective effort to fight this crisis are the need of our. We have to restart the tourism business one after another. I believe we will overcome this crisis soon and tourism activities will get new momentum. Again, as a tourism minister of Nepal, I request Pata International to extend your support in destination making of Nepal as you did in the wake of earthquake. Once again, thank you very much and wish the webinar a success. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Well, thank you very much, Minister, for those kind words. And as always, PATA will always be here to support Nepal and all of our members, both from the public and private sector. And with that, we would now like to move to our Fireside Chat with BBC. And with this, I would like to welcome back for the Fireside Chat. She's a presenter on BBC's The Travel Show, Ms. Carmen Roberts. Hello, Carmen.
Hi, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Well, the stage is all yours, so.
Okay, well, I'm thrilled to be here, and we're going to have a fireside chat now with Dr. Dhananjaya Regmi, who is the CEO of the Nepal Tourism Board. Not only is Dr. Regmi a CEO, he's also an eminent mountain geomorphologist and a glaciologist of Nepal. So welcome, Dr. Regmi. Can you tell me what exactly is a mountain geomorphologist and a glaciologist? Just briefly. Oh, we might have to unmute you, Dr. Regmi, please. Oh, we'll just have to. Few technical problems. Okay, can you hear me, Dr. Regmi? Okay. Paul, is there some technical help that we can offer Dr. Regmi? This worked in our test.
Yes. Yeah, it's nothing on our end here. He is unmuted.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I think, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Okay.
Okay. Wonderful. Just a nutshell version. What exactly is a geomorphologist and a glaciologist?
Well, geomorphology is a study of the mountain landscape, and glaciology is something that where we study about the glaciers.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I'm doing this study, especially in the Nepal mountains, for the last 18 years.
Wow, you're in the right place. So I understand, Dr. Regmi, that you just started this role as CEO of the Nepal Tourism Board just at the start of the year. Wow, what an introduction to your new role. Can you tell me about the biggest challenges that you've been facing so far?
Well, as soon as I started my tenure as a CEO, the first day, it's always I mentioned that the first my meeting was about the COVID-19 and about this crisis. So I started my tenure with the crisis. So I really don't know how the former CEOs used to start their tenure and what really used to be in the normal time. So for me, the overall is like the Nepal Tourism Board need to face always with the crisis like this. So for me, it is not a new. So I'm not surprised at all. So I started to take it as a general routine. And so I think I'm taking it very easily and try to make the industry to take it easy as well, because this type of, and now when I review the others in the past, what we used to do and what I'm doing right now, we are completely, in the past we focusing on the international marketing, digital marketing, but now we are focusing mostly on how to keep people safe, how to promote the tourism for the future, how to keep the industry survive, because now we are, instead of promoting, or we are thinking about how we can survive, how we can keep the people's business moving on, and how we can keep them in the same industry during this crisis, so that we don't have to work again hard for years to gain what we have gained in the last couple of decades.
So what's happening on the ground? What are all these people doing? I heard that over 1 million people are directly or indirectly involved in the tourism industry in Nepal, and it's so heavily reliant on international travelers. What are all these Sherpas doing? What are the hoteliers doing? What are all the local communities doing?
Well, actually, you know, as the rest of the world, Nepal also announced the lockdown after 23rd, but Nepali people really followed the lockdowns, what the government has called on. So we strictly follow the guidelines given by the Nepal government, and all the travel tourism industry people were there. They keep lock them, and they follow what the government directions for more than 3 months. And after that, the government slightly open, and now we are partly open. Some of the activities are open, but we are still moving within a small territory, geographical territory, like the people in the Kathmandu, Bhaktapur, we are moving within this valley. People in Pokhara, if you have to leave one valley and have to go to another geographical region, then you have to get some permissions, and you have to keep yourself on the isolations or quarantine, self-quarantine for a while. So people are not prefer moving from one geographical region to another geographical regions. But this is what is going on at one side. Another side, these are tourism entrepreneurs. We are working, especially how we can survive ourselves. So during the COVID crisis, with the tourism entrepreneur, we were first focusing on let's keep the people safe who were in Nepal. So we have little bit worked on the extended tourists to support them. And at another side, we were working together to come up, to request the government to come up with the policies that do help Nepal to survive during this crisis. We were not focusing much on the revival, because still we really don't know where the whole world will go and what sort of policies and what sort of the crisis will be there in the future. But at present is the how to survive. So we requested government to come up with some of these, some policies from in the budget, so that people can feel relief, especially who have invested a lot, because they have bank loans, they have to pay the interest. There are the number of employees who are working with them. They are demanding their salaries, even though it is a lockdown, but you need to pay some money to your employees. So that's so we requested government to come up with the policies that to help both the entrepreneurs as well as the workers who supported them. And as you know, Nepal is a mountainous country, not on the hotels, but the people who were seasonally work in the mountains, they are also suffered. So we told the government that there are many people who are not within the government record in the taxation system, but they need to address them also, because they are also the citizen of Nepal, and they are really living a very hard life in the mountains. So we worked together, and finally the government come up with some of the relief packages, which are not 100% enough, but from Nepal it is okay at present. So we are thinking that if this applies in a better way, and if it can be assessed to everyone, then it is going to help Nepal to sustain for 6 months to a year. So this is what we are assuming. So at present, we again, the private sectors and NTB itself, we are working together to give the suggestions to the government to make procedures that helps to get these facilities provided by the government equally to everyone, from the labor to the 5-star hotel owners. So this is where we are working on for the survival. And for the revival, we are especially at present working on the digital platform mostly. We are preparing ourselves and we are studying very closely what is going on in our neighbor countries or the countries from where the tourists used to visit Nepal in the past. So we are working on both at the survival, and for the revival, we are just studying and preparing ourselves that how we will react once the lockdown will over and the airlines will resume.
Given your environmental background, has there been much in way of environmental well-being and recovery in that sense? For instance, are these Sherpas who are no longer working, are they helping clean the rubbish on Everest, for instance? Has work been diverted to other things like that in way of survival?
Yeah, well, what we are doing is actually, as soon as this started, I had always a dream that, because in my 18-year experience, I always talk about the mountains, garbage in the mountains, environmental problems, sometimes the overcrowded tourism activities. And always I used to focus on we need to identify the carrying capacity of any area and need to issue the license or the permits to visit those areas based on the carrying capacity in particular season. And this was my focus as a researcher in the past. And after coming here, now I'm in a place from where I can strongly recommend the government or give suggestions to the government. And now government is taking it very seriously. So government given instructions to me to come up with the better environmental policies that can be implemented by the government. And I'm very closely working with the private sectors, and I'm trying to convince, because I don't want to implement or impose any sort of new rule and regulations without the concern of the private sectors who are running their businesses in that area. So because enforcement is not good, and so I want to make them also their own agenda, so that we all, once we agreed, then I'm thinking about requesting the government to come up it as a policy, included in the policy. So that is one part I'm working on. But during this crisis, what I'm try to involve the UNDP, IFC, World Bank, their funds to clean up the mountains. So we are using mostly these people who are, especially who are the mountain guides, who are the trekking guides. We already have some funds available for them. So we can start the cleaning up the mountains and building some of the porter houses, because in the mountains mountains are really, really difficult places. Sometimes you don't have a place to sleep, and porters have to go somewhere on the small caves below the big rocks and have to sleep there. So we are trying to improve the facilities that are available for not only for the tourists. Tourists mostly take out the tents because they paid for that, but the workers who never have that, who don't have those tents, we are trying to make some shelters for them and then improve the trail conditions. And at the same time, we are focusing on cleaning the mountains. So doing so during this crisis, we can create some jobs to the mountain workers. And we are also thinking about cleaning these heritage sites. And also we are using especially the rafters to clean the river banks, so that we can at one side generate some jobs, and another side we will have a positive environmental impact, and the good message goes to the world community. So this is how we are working at present.
That's great. Well, at least there's some good to come out of this crisis. And also, when I think of Nepal, I think of Mount Everest. What are your plans for the future when tourists eventually do come back? Is there plans to diversify your tourism portfolio?
Well, Carmen, actually, Nepal has two types of identity. One identity is among the Nepalese. When we talk about within the Nepal, that Nepal is, because it is garden of 4 caste and 36 ethnicities. And we talk about not about the Everest or the Lumbini. We talk about the geopolitical strategical location between China and India. This is how the Nepal introduced ourselves within the Nepalese. And when we talk with the outside of the world community, when we talk about the tourism, then we talk about the Everest and Lumbini. This is two very completely different. But you know, when we Nepali introduce our country as a diversified country, where we have so many linguistic groups, so many ethnicity, this is what we never try to show to the global community. So this is a time, and from the beginning, Nepal tourism was started at the end of the 1950s, and or from 1950s as a mountaineering activities, then trekking. So our all focus was there. We thought that this is the only potentiality that Nepal have, but we never try to focus on the mid hills, different ethnic groups, their cultural diversity. And now I'm trying to change a little bit about the little bit on that, and try to focus on the mid hills as well, together with the equally focusing on the mountains, but going to introduce new area of a new destination. And this time we convinced the government, and government introduced to develop, agreed to develop mid hills as a tourism destination, and government declared to come up with the 7 hill stations covering from eastern Nepal to the western Nepal, and joining them through different villages where different ethnic group and people are living with their own culture. So when now the people can travel Nepal not only in 2 seasons, especially Nepal is a destination for the autumn and spring, but now people can go anytime to Nepal. And this is what we are thinking for the future, and we already started to work on it, and government is looking forward to involve the private sector as well, because only the government initiation or the declaration never going to make it happen in the reality. So the government and NTB is leading that actually from the government side, and we are trying to collaborate it with the private sector, taking jointly with them, working on it, and establish these new destinations for the future at one side. At another, to some extent, we already worked on the Buddhism circuit, especially on the Lumbini, but still Lumbini is a place where the people come, especially from the India, but they just visit and return back in a day. But we are going to focus more on, because it's the birthplace of the Lord Buddha, and we are going to change it a little bit as a meditation center, yoga center for the people who are disturbed, or they can come there and they can do a meditation, and they can get the completely different enlightenment there, and they can go with the different knowledge, different completely by rejuvenating themselves. So this is what we are going to focus on. So we are just not thinking about going on a Lumbini, see only the birthplace, but we have developed a circuit, and so that people can spend around a week in Nepal, and then they can see all around the Buddha birthplaces, number of places where there are number of activities were there at the time of the Buddha, and there were some wells that were developed, some Asoka pillars where different things were written about the Buddha. So, and then they can go to the India, to the Sarnath, and to the Bodh Gaya, and so we are going to focus on that as well. So this is how we are going to introduce, give a new Nepal as a, after in a new normal life, we are going to introduce Nepal as a new destination as well, not only for the mountains and the climbing or the trekking, but for the cultural trails, for the all year-round destination. Yeah, this is what we are doing.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Regmi. I think that's about all we've got time for. It's time to wrap up. Was there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Well, thank you, Carmen, to provide this opportunity to address all this big mass. But I just want to say that this Nepal, it's a beautiful destination. And I think after the COVID, Nepal is going to be one of the most favorable destinations for the people because of its remoteness, less people, and it's like the mountainous nature. And what the webinars I have attended in the last 3-4 months, everybody is saying that now the future is for the mass, not for the mass tourism. It is going to be a trekking, climbing, or the adventure activities. And I think that there is no place in the world what Nepal can offer in terms of these three: climbing, trekking, and in the adventure activities. So I think I would like to welcome everyone. We are looking forward. We are trying to improve all the facilities. We have already come up with the protocols. Now we are giving the trainings. We are preparing ourselves to welcome you so that we can provide good health and safety safety standards to you, and to make your Nepal visit more safer and memorable in the future. And thank you, Carmen and the PATA team, to give me this wonderful opportunity to address everyone as a CEO of Nepal Tourism Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Regmi, for such an interesting chat. So now we're moving on to the panel discussion. And obviously, I would like to invite my fellow panelists to turn on their cameras now, please, and also unmute themselves. And for all the audience out there, don't forget, if you'd like to propose a question, use the Q&A function as opposed to the chat. So Q&A is where I'll be looking for audience questions. So the panel discussion, obviously today, will focus on ensuring the well-being. The travel and tourism industry has a duty of care and a moral obligation to ensure the safety and care of not only just the guests, but employees and also local communities. And to a certain extent, as we heard from Dr. Regmi earlier, to the environment as well. So how can the industry strengthen and guarantee well-being and happiness across the sector and beyond? Well, every country is obviously struggling with this right now. And I think Nepal is in a unique situation because it's so heavily reliant on international tourists. So let's get this panel discussion underway, and we'll introduce our fellow panelists. First up, we have Ms. Nandini Lay-Thapa. She's the Senior Director at the Nepal Tourism Board and the Head of the International Marketing and Promotion Department. Ms. Nandini, do you want to give a brief overview of your job, please? Have we got, maybe you can turn on your camera.
Yeah, my camera is on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Perhaps you could give a brief overview of your work at the Nepal Tourism Board, please.
Okay. A very good morning to all of you from Kathmandu, and I would like to thank PATA for giving us this great opportunity, and to you, Carmen, for being our host today. It's a great opportunity for Nepal to promote ourselves despite the hard times. And well, I've been with the Tourism Board ever since its inception. That's over 21 years. Started up, went up the rung, and I have primarily been looking after international marketing for Nepal as a unique destination globally. And these are challenging times for us. But then again, Nepal and the Nepalese travel trade industry is extremely resilient. We have come out of, the earthquake and, so many different situations in the past. So we are very hopeful about this time. And I'm really looking forward to having the discussion today with you. Thanks, Carmen.
Great. Thanks, Ms. Nandini. And joining us all the way from Brussels is Eduardo Santando, who is the Executive Director of the European Travel Commission. Thank you so much, Eduardo, for joining us so early in the morning. Could you give a brief description of what you do with the European Travel Commission, please?
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you for hosting us. And obviously my biggest gratitude go to the people of Nepal, and also for PATA for joining us together here in this panel discussion. Europe has been suffering as much as the rest of the world. As you say, as you saw in previous months, we were seen as the epicenter of the pandemic of COVID-19, affecting tourism massively. It was devastating. It was an industry that was really running good, and it is still one of the most important industry for the European Union. Imagine that it represents at least 10% of the European GDP, and it employs over 30 million people. So we are talking about a very, very structural industry for the functioning of the European Union. And also, it's part also of the idiosyncrasy and of the DNA, if you want, of Europeans to travel. And tourism was invented in Europe like centuries ago, and it's something that has been exported to the rest of the world. The issue at glance, obviously, is the reopening. We are very glad that since July 1st, all European borders have opened internally. And now we are step-by-step reopening also our external borders. So there is a lot of room now for improvement. Obviously, it is not easy to understand how the pandemic will develop. And obviously, there is always a fear of outbreaks here and there. But something we can say very loud is that we have learned a lesson, and now we know what to do if something happens again. Maybe the three major keys for recovery of tourism in the European Union, and that can be absolutely exported to the beautiful country of Nepal, are the three basic principles that we have been applying since the very beginning, which are, first of all, coordination. It's very important to coordinate any kind of measures, protocols with the private industry, but with the public authorities, and obviously with the end consumers. Transparency is the second one. Transparency means that we have to communicate in these times even much better. And thank you, Carmen, again, to BBC and yourself, because media here has a huge role, to reach the end consumer and reestablish the much needed trust and confidence to have people traveling again, and obviously booking their flights and booking their holidays again. And last but not least, the principle of non-discrimination. We've been advocating of not having bubbles, corridors, or multilateral agreements between countries, because we think that had created in the past weeks a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration among the end consumers, and we saw that it didn't solve any problems at all. So our approach has been to reopen Europe together, and obviously assuming the risk also together. But I think that together we're much stronger when it comes to present Europe as a destination for the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I'm just reminding everyone to keep their cameras on. So next is Mr. Yogendra Shakya from the Ace Hotels that owns the Hotel Ambassador, Marco Polo Hotel, and the Club Himalaya, among others. And Yogendra, you're also the former chairman of the Hotel Association of Nepal. What's the state of play with hotels right now in Nepal? What's being done to ensure well-being? Oh, you'll have to unmute, I'm sorry.
Good morning, Ms. Roberts. Yes, like everybody else, the whole industry is very worried. Of course, the tourism industry in Nepal has had a very good history of resilience, because every 10 years we have some kind of a problem coming into the industry due to political unrest or earthquakes or even Middle East, when we had overland travel, that's how we started with the hippies in the late 60s and the 70s. And they were all overland travelers from Europe coming all across the Middle East. So that when the Middle East crisis came, we had a crisis. When we had this bad image of Goodbye Shangri-La in the 90s, 80s and 90s, we had a crisis. The earthquake was a crisis. And somehow we kind of got very resilient in getting back. But this one happens to be an international crisis. So this has brought more worry than any of the crises earlier. But I think, as our CEO mentioned, Nepal is nature, So adventure, more away from the crowd, so that image gives us an edge for revival very quickly, because that's probably where the post-COVID tourists will be looking for. So that brings us a little smile, thinking that that might be a big help to revive. At the moment, we are all talking about survival. So that's the main key. And we have had this problem in 2005 and 6 due to the Maoist insurgency, when our tourism fell almost 50% and many hotels closed down. So we are working with the government that we don't repeat history and save hotels and save jobs. At the moment, the industry is trying very hard not to take the hard step of retrenchment or job losses, but to sustain for maybe another 1 or 2 years. So we really would have to work together with everybody, the givers and the takers in the industry, the workers and the employers. So I think this is a key challenge, and we're working on that. And let's hope, like every challenges we have overcome, we will overcome it and we'll be back into business.
So what's happening with your hotels though on the ground? Are they all closed? What's being done now to ensure well-being amongst your employees in the local community?
Yes, we are all very aware that the key to promotion post-COVID would be the safety of the guests. So not only the hotels, but even the destination, the mayors of the destinations, the people are very aware. And we're all working towards how to not only keep our industry, the hotels clean, but the whole area, so that we don't have any COVID cases in the destination. So there's a lot of even non-tourism people are very concerned. So I think that's the key that we're working on. Of course, we're also looking at starting our tourism with domestic. But unfortunately, our domestic tourism is just about 22 years old. Earlier, unlike many countries, our tourism did not start with domestic tourism. We started with international tourism. And I said earlier, our tourism actually started in 1953 with the ascent of Mount Everest. So that's where we caught the attention of the international arena for being a mystical destination. So our international tourism is 67 years old. From that, then of course, everybody knows we were the heaven for the flower people. I mean, they really put us in the map in the 60s, late 60s and the 70s. And when that cult died off, then we went into promoting and branding our country as adventure, nature, and culture, which is very suitable. And that's where our tourism was. And I think for post-COVID, that's a very good image for restarting.
So Ms. Nandini, is there a push for domestic tourism?
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely. Carmen, I mean, like every other speaker said, I mean, this is a situation that has affected the entire globe, and it is really, really a horrible situation to be in. And as the National Tourism Organization, and and as the umbrella organization, we really have a lot of responsibility towards the trade. So we are the bridge between the government and the private sector. So and we are really working very, very closely with both to ensure that we could come up with the best relief and recovery strategies. Now, and I've really like to point out that Mr. Yoginder Sakya, who's really really one of the doyens of of tourism in Nepal. He actually led. He was the main convener of the Visit Nepal 2011 campaign, and he came up with a slogan that said "Together for Tourism," and he was really successful in bringing the entire country together to promote tourism and to really sort of emphasize the value of tourism to Nepal. So we not only had people in the tourism sector, we also had people from every sector, the politicians. I mean, everybody was a part of the thing, and that's the spirit we are really trying to revive again. It is a really difficult time, and we are sort of working very closely together with the government, with the private sector, trying to come up with relief measures. Of course, like it was pointed out earlier, I mean, we are really trying not to sort of cut down on jobs or incomes, because that's really, really going to be a major issue here. Because unlike in other countries, a lot of Nepal's tourism is beyond man-made. It's just not like they're just going to a temple or whatever. A lot of our tourism activities are based beyond the city limits. So that also, the good part of it is also that the trickle-down effects of tourism is pretty high, because when you're trekking and walking and hiking to the villages, to different areas, you're actually giving jobs to the people there. You're buying in fresh supplies from the villages you pass through. So you see the value chain effect is very dramatic, for Nepal. So that's what we are also trying to, see how we could support them. The CEO already pointed out, we have been talking to various INGOs and trying to come up with sort of alternate, income possibilities for them on one side, and also try and carry out training and support for the larger INGOs, so that, people could learn alternate, occupations also. For example, a Sherpa who's employed during the season time could also learn carpentry or masonry, and then he could be sort of gainfully employed off season also. So we are really looking at different angles as far as how how we are preparing for the post COVID area, or whenever the post-opening, whenever we open up, hopefully not in the too far future. And so we have come up with our protocols, the health, hygiene, and sanitation protocols for the industry that covers every sector of tourism, or every sector concerned with tourism in Nepal. So it starts right from the airport, and it covers what you do while rafting, while trekking, sightseeing, tourism office management, vehicles. And what we did was, we came up with a shell, and we passed it out to the industry professionals, because at the end of the day, they are the end users. So there's no point in coming up with a really fancy document that they are not comfortable using it. So we took their feedback. So it's literally their baby. And so that has been launched by the government. And we are in the process of now carrying out trainings at all levels to orient them, and also that they get used to using these protocols and write down. And so we're having a series of trainings to get people comfortable with these protocols, these health and sanitation protocols. Yeah.
Is this similar, Eduardo?
Your question was about domestic tourism.
Yes, domestic tourism. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, of course. Yes. And
are there plans to boost that, because I guess it's so heavy. Nepal is so heavily reliant on international tourism.
Absolutely.
So I would say more established tourism markets in Europe would have that domestic market already.
Yes, and yes, compared to maybe other neighboring countries, domestic tourism is still in a nascent phase. But then over the last few years, it has been growing at quite a good rate, because I mean, if you sort of on a weekend, if you want to go to one of the nearby hill station destinations or Pokhara, you hardly get a room available. It's a lot of locals who have really started traveling around. And in fact, there has been a lot of outbound, also growing outbound from Nepal to other countries. So that is the market we are targeting. And so we are literally a travel bubble is kind of, first we are really looking at focusing on the domestic market, and then we move on to the regional market, and of course the long haul market at a later stage. So our main focus is going to be the domestic market along with the regional market for now.
Okay, and you also, Ms. Nandini, touched on hygiene. Eduardo, has this been a big thing in Europe, and how big of a challenge has it been to ensure well-being through the hygiene, which I guess is a huge factor now with this pandemic.
Absolutely, because you know, the new normal has really changed, and I very strongly, and I'm sure you agree with me, that the next you know, in the future, you know, people are not going to decide on a destination just by the unique attractions of a destination. They're going to first check on what you know, hygiene and the sanitation and safety protocols destination. That is going to be a deciding factor, right? So, and that is one of the first things that Nepal is has you know, been focusing on, and the protocols have been very readily accepted by the trade, and so that's how we are moving forward. In fact, I was listening in when I was in a meeting with the Honorable Minister, and he said, well, you know what, the next new thing is going to be SMS, and I was like, oh, is he talking about a phone message? And he said that's going to be social distancing for S, M is mask, and S is a sanitizer. So he said that's how life is going to be, and that's how we have to learn to be in the future.
It's the new normal.
Yeah, the new normal, yes.
And how have they been coping with that in Europe, Eduardo? How have the new hygiene measures been taken, Eduardo, in Europe? Mr. Santander, because I guess Europeans are not used to wearing the mask.
That's very true. Well, let me just start saying that maybe let's go back 1 second to the domestic issue with domestic travel, because, you know, this is something that we look into in Europe from the very beginning and say, okay, that it could be the solution for this upcoming summer, and to keep, you know, like boosting domestic demand. Domestic demand doesn't suffice the majority of the destinations, and this is also happening here in Europe. But we made some maths there, and we put market research in place to tell us that what it could save the summer is intra-regional tourism, which is exactly, you know, Europeans traveling in Europe. So like Germans going to Italy, Spaniards going to France, and so on and so on. And this represents almost 85% of European travelers. So it's practically the vast majority of tourists in Europe are Europeans. Only 15% are coming from third markets, you know, from Asia, Americas, Africa, and so on. So that was a very important point, and we've done a lot of campaigns to boost that. Second of all, and with regards to your question concerning hygienic measures and the fact of having to wear a mask, which is obviously not a habit here in Europe at all, whereas in Asia, because of previous outbreaks and you know, also like more or less it was something that people were more used to do from time to time, not all the time. People have accepted that. I always compare this to the crisis that we had with terrorism years ago. You know, we were absolutely not used to have to remove our shoes in airports, or, you know, to put our liquids in bags, or, you know, to travel lighter, your handbag being screened several times, and so on. Whereas now it's completely, I mean, I don't call it the new normal. It's the new reality. You either do that way, or you cannot travel. So you have to face reality and also accept the new rules of the game. And I think Europeans are very conscious that this summer and tourism now, or to make tourism happen, you have to adapt, and you have to also take your own ownership and responsibility and liability too when it comes, you know, to your own actions. So it's not only securing that a destination or a hotel or a restaurant is safe, and there are we have a partner here with WTTC, and we have with UNWTO to create, you know, labels and clean and safe, you know, and some destinations are claiming to be absolutely safe. But the reality is nobody's 100% safe in this pandemic crisis. So you have to take your own personal individual responsibility and be careful about your decision. And that brings me to, you know, with Mr. Jogendra was saying before there about the importance also of reboosting another kind of tourism, which is the one that visit outdoors, stay in its own bubble, meaning, you know, in their own family circles or friend circles. We used to be a very famous destination for summer festivals, and obviously, you know, you can see a lot of pictures of crowded beaches in the European coast and so on. But this summer we see that this is going to be different. You know, people are going to be traveling more to national parks, to outdoors, doing more things in the free environment, and so on and so on. So this is also an opportunity to boost and to diversify tourism. And I know Nepal is doing that since the very beginning, and trying also to spread flows, not only in some very crowded places. And this is not very different in Europe. In Europe, you have the hotspots of tourism, and you have heard about for many years now about the so-called phenomena of over-tourism in some places in Europe. And now we're trying to use this crisis as an opportunity, you know, to rethink what we could do much better. How can we also spread the flows in a more sustainable way? Sustainability meant in the three dimensions, in the social, the economic, and also environmental dimensions. Because it's about bringing people also to lesser known destinations, you know, to places in Europe that are much needed of tourism revenue, where local communities are suffering because of the exodus, you know, to urban areas, and tourism is the only solution for them, you know, to revitalize their economies. So I think that applies worldwide. I'm sure that in Nepal, I'm not very familiar with the problems and challenges of Nepal, but I'm sure from what I heard, that are very similar. You want to get people all over the country visiting not only very famous places that we have seen in films, and we've seen in media and in travel magazines and so on. So you would like people, you know, to start exploring also a different Nepal. We have, in that extent, we are in coordination and cooperation with the European Union, with our authorities here. We are shifting our marketing strategies even before COVID towards a more thematic approach. And one of those themes is slow adventure, you know, which we believe that we have here also the Alps in Europe, where obviously there is a lot of people going to do more extreme activities, alpinism, you know, climbing, and so on and so on. But, you know, the vast majority of travelers, of tourists, including myself, you know, when we go with our families, you know, to a place, we love to try something soft, and it could be like a kayaking, or it could be like a soft hike, or you know, you name them. And we discovered that there is a huge potential, you know, to also educate end consumers in the importance of protecting the environment, and maybe have a more impactful imprint, or when it comes to help local communities to develop tourism too, you know. So we are shifting for this very revenue margin driven tourism industry to a more conscious one, and I call it regenerative tourism in Europe. We have gone through those phases of you know, of reaching a peak already in numbers of visitors, numbers of overnights, in expenditure. And in Europe, we have decided that we don't want to be the first, as I say, you know, in arrivals, numbers being always the number one tourism destination worldwide, but we want to be the best, which is a very different thing. And to be the best, you have to be very in a state of mind of cooperation. You cannot do it on your own. You have to partner with all your neighboring countries and regions, and not only the neighboring ones. You know, we've found that, you know, places like Iceland, you know, like a remote place in the Northern Atlantic, you know, have more to do with places like in the Alps, or, you know, in Ireland, or, you know, so you find partnerships, you know, through also market research. There's a lot to say about primary and secondary research. I think that if you permitted to give a piece of advice to Nepal, is to do a lot of market research when it comes, you know, to study demand. I know Pata is doing a great job in the Asia Pacific area. And I know Mario is a leader here also in boosting research and innovation, you know, to help destinations. But it's something that we share here in Europe. You know, we need to understand more. We don't need to prescribe people what to do. We need to ask in advance what they expect from destinations first. And we have discovered amazing things like, people are much more driven, to do so personal experiences rather than the mass product or the package travel and so on. And this COVID-19 is obviously accelerating this process of regeneration. And it's something that I would like to transmit to all of you, optimism, in a sense that from time to time, I don't want to say it this way, but I think we needed a wake-up call. And this wake-up call, unfortunately, has cost a lot of lives. And this is not what but if we can do something to honor the lives of all the people that have died so far from COVID-19, is to make our business much more sustainable, much more looking forward to a better future and to the next generations. Because, this planet doesn't belong to us, it doesn't belong to anybody. And through tourism, we can educate people, to love our planet and to love our nature, and obviously to love all the heritage that we as humans are living here in this planet.
Yes, that's great. I really like that term, regenerative tourism. I think that could come quite to the fore in post-crisis tourism era. So we've got a lot of questions coming in on the Q&A function. But before we do that, I did this in the last session, but for the panelists, are there questions that you would like to ask each other, perhaps? Is there any questions you would have for instance, Yogendra, would you have any questions for Eduardo or Nandini?
Maybe I've sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
I'd love, to launch a more regional cooperation. Again, Nepal have to do so much with many regions here in Europe, but we don't link ourselves so naturally. You probably partner more with your neighboring countries, and you mentioned, your source markets and so. But, imagine, the amount of experiences that we can share. Best case here that we have had in, for instance, Alpine region or Scandinavian regions that share a lot of your challenges, but they share a lot of opportunities with you. Issues like connectivity, sustainability, but also like the involvement of local communities more and more, tourism should become, in the future, an industry. We should be almost a 0% carbon footprint. And how are we going to do this together? Because it doesn't make sense that one part of the world make this shift and the other one doesn't. Because, in the end, the air that we breathe is the same, all over the planet. So I just would like, to invite Nepal, to share with us in Europe, and also to this panel to be the very beginning of a long-term cooperation from both parts of the world, because I think there are more things that join us that separate us.
Yes, definitely. Yes, you again.
Yes, Ms. Roberts, can I just add another question? Since we are discussing today about well-being, and I think the concern in most of the countries abroad, everywhere else, is how is tourism accepted by the people of the country?
Yes.
I know there are some countries where the people are tired of tourists.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike that, I think Nandini just mentioned to you about our 2011 campaign, where I was leading as the national coordinator. And it was a national campaign for tourism promotion, but the slogan wasn't anything tourism or international promotion. It was more together for tourism. Because until the people are with you in the industry, you can never have the industry really flourish.
Yes.
So the first point, before even going for marketing or promotion, was are your own people happy about tourists coming in? So from that angle, I think we are at a very good advantage, because this COVID requires not only the cooperation of the industry, but the whole community. And that slogan of 2011, Together for Tourism, which was actually, and we were successful to bring all the political parties, because, you know, we went through insurgency for 10 years and we were politically so divided, but the whole nation came together for tourism. And I still remember, even during the insurgency, the Maoist leaders always brought out statements that this is an internal, you know, conflict and tourists are safe. So even during the worst period of insurgency, and the people who were actually fighting in the countrysides were so friendly with tourists. And I think if Nepal is, besides having the beautiful nature, culture, mountains, people still remember Nepal more as the people. You know, I think people come back. We have almost about 40–50% repeat visitors. It's because the treatment they get from the porters, from the guide, from the Sherpas, they not become friend of the country, but they make their friends in the community. So I think, in short, this fear of well-being, where sometimes tourism entrepreneurs and tourism industry only thinks of their own income and not about the community. But here we have a full support. And that's one of the, I mean, it gives us a lot of strength and hope, and, you know, that our tourism will be getting a lot of help from the local communities, which is so important for revival. Thank you.
Definitely. And Ms. Nandini, did you have any questions for your fellow panel?
Rather than questions, I'd just like to share something a little more, since we are talking about how we could really get the involvement of the community and also ensure that they are safe and the visitors are safe in the future. So, and that is also, I mean, apart from thinking about how to survive. And we all know that the cake is going to become a cookie and everybody is going to get the tiniest piece, because just like Eduardo pointed out, we really need to go into co-opetition and not competition anymore, not only within Nepal, not only within the trade, but also along with our neighboring destinations, because apart from the hardcore adventure tourists, Nepal, who come in basically to climb mountains and do a lot of adventure activities, we have a lot of inflow also from India and from Thailand and other countries where people. So at some times Nepal is not a standalone destination. So we have already started talking to them about when it starts opening up for long haul travel, let us not only promote between our countries, but also let us market together in the long haul market. So we are sort of putting in steps in that direction. And you had a question earlier to the CEO about the environmental management, and there's a lot of focus in that part. I mean, there is been a lot of write-ups and a lot of articles coming about how sustainability is also going to be a huge focus on environmental management when a person chooses, because the entire mindset has changed today. And that's where, so people are really not only looking for an exciting experience, but they're looking for a very positive and a very rejuvenating physical and mental and psychological, emotional experience. And that's where I think Nepal is really well placed, because on one side, of course, right on top, we have Mount Everest, but down south, we are also the cradle of world peace with the birthplace of Lord Buddha. And so apart from, Nepal's nature, culture, adventure is there, we're also trying to position Nepal as a spiritual destination, not only as, not in terms of religious term, but a place where you could really come and rejuvenate you also in that pristine nature. And I mean, we have so much to offer. So that's on one side. And again, coming back, I really cannot help showing off our little protocol book. That's the one we have published. Okay, so that covers the entire gamut of the travel sector. And what we did is, because this literally, every country's tourism protocol or health protocol is really going to become the Bible for safety and basically for COVID safety and general safety in the future. So, we have been talking, and we are pretty well known for ecotourism and, the steps that we have put in to mitigate pollution. But then, and we sort of presume that this is a book that everybody, every travel agent and every employee is going to read so well, because that's their instance, their own safety, their family's safety, the team member's safety, and the safety of the clientele. So we very cleverly, with a little bit of input from the travel trade, we put in the segment on environmental suggestions. We call it green tip. Okay, so every segment, whether it's hotels, whether it's travel agencies, it's restaurants, vehicles, when rafting, anything. So each segment has got tips on how they could, have more environmentally friendly. They could have the little tips. We call them green tips. So this is something, and in fact, I shared this on a webinar some time back, and a lot of neighboring countries said, "Oh, could we copy this idea?" So we are putting in our steps to see that we are greener in the future.
Oh, that's great. So we're going on to some questions now. We've got a couple that are very similar. So Bob Zozo Brado, I hope I've pronounced all these names properly. Pardon me if I haven't. What's the population of Nepal, and what's your target international arrivals after tourism has normalized? And also Parashu Nepal has also asked about programs and policies to attract tourists from North America, which is quite interesting. What is the international campaign?
Yeah, okay. So it says Potter. Okay, could I just take it up?
Yes, Nandini, please.
Okay. So we have a population about 30 million people. And as far as our tourism arrivals are concerned, we ended up, especially after the earthquake in 2015, we really had an amazing double-digit recovery year on year. And so last year we ended up with almost about 1.2 million tourists by air. This year, we really need to relook the figures. So I cannot really even give you a ballpark figure. We would be primarily looking at domestic tourists, and then regional, and then later on, probably, hopefully by by mid next year, like more tourists coming in from the long haul market. Now, as far as North America is concerned, you'd be really surprised to know, who was asked the question, that among our major arrivals are from India and China, and among the long haul markets, USA has always stood number one. So we have the maximum number of long haul travelers from America, and of course, once the market opens up, once the airlines open up, we would be again, marketing Nepal in all the countries, and especially North America, as we have been doing in the past. But this time we will be, of course, focusing a lot on digital marketing also initially. Yeah.
But if you look at the North American COVID stats, they're not good.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not handling the pandemic very well. Is that a factor in who you attract? And I guess, Eduardo, has that been a factor in who you've allowed in, so to speak, in Europe?
Yeah. Absolutely, actually the European Union published a list 3 days ago for third countries that are allowed to come to Europe already from yesterday. So, and the United States is not on that list, which is obviously the obvious reason is that the epidemic data of the United States are far too high compared to the ones in Europe right now. And also it's a matter of reciprocity. Europeans are not allowed to travel into the United States yet. And this is a principle of the European Union that you only open. Same with China. China, we will be permitted to, we will open the borders with China as soon as they also open their borders to citizens of the European Union. So yeah, it's a complex world, because it's not only about tourism, it's about diplomacy, it's about trading, and obviously nobody wants to make a big mistake that brings us to square one again. And the square one is a very risky one that can absolutely kill the economy. It absolutely create a recession, and nobody wants to go in that direction. I think everybody's very conscious that this summer season is going to be a very different one, and nobody expects this to be the summer of 2019 or 2018 with record numbers. But I think it could be, as I was saying before, a summer of reflection too. What do we want to achieve together? What do we want to seek for the future of our industry? And with regards, to the American travels, it's also essential for the European Union. There are destinations very much depending on them. And this will imply that for these destinations, they will have to diversify and also reopen to US the moment they can. And we are much looking forward to welcoming them again. It is obviously matter of public health still and of sanitary reasons that they're not opening the borders to them. And I'm sure that sooner than later this will be solved, and hopefully by September or October, the borders will be open to the United States of America. Having said that, we are talking about September being the new July. So it's again, I would like to spread some optimism. It's not that the season, we have a huge issue, and I think Nepal also has a huge issue of seasonality in Europe. The summer period, July and August, is the peak season. There are, obviously people coming to the same places at the same time. And we've loved to extend the summer season maybe to September and even October in the southern part of Europe. The summer is long enough, it's warm enough for that. So what I'm trying to say that these can provoke some new ideas, or can bring new innovative ideas to extend tourism seasons, and to kill the issue of seasonality, which is much affecting so many destinations worldwide, and it doesn't make much sense. We've seen also that people are now working from home, as we're doing these days, and maybe more flexible work times will help people also planning their holidays in different periods during the year, and that will help in Nepal, but also many destinations in Asia, to reestablish new marketing plans, to see, okay, this is tourism all over the year, it's all year round. We want you to visit no matter when, and our destinations are opening all year round, to creating more wealth for the local communities.
Great, thank you. So I think the next question would be for Yogendra. It's from Pukar Bandari. There are thousands of hospitality students in Kathmandu city. Are there any plans to include these young tourism professionals in the survival and revival process of tourism? Have you sought to use these?
Yes, I know. I think there are young students, young people who are wanting to get into tourism, because if you look at what was happening in Nepal before the COVID, there was a euphoria of expansion in all the tourism sectors, from hotels, travel, because in spite of the earthquake, the numbers were climbing up in 2 digits. So from all angles, from the investors, from the government, from young people saying, now this is where we will make our career. So then with this COVID, there is going to be a kind of problem of employment in the industry, definitely for the next 2 or 3 years, or even a little longer, because I think to bounce back to 2019, I don't think it will happen before 4 years. So these students now, what can they do? And I've been speaking to some young people because I always get this question, we went into the industry because everything was looking so good. Hotels were expanding, so we took up this course. Now suddenly, even the people who are working in the industry may lose their jobs. So what can we do? So I've been telling them that one area where we have not been able to develop is activities, creative activities. It could be, taking tourists for a walk. It could be having mountain biking. And these are small investments, and but that are creative and entertaining. For example, I run a hotel not very far from Kathmandu, in a place called Nagarkot in the hill resort. So the biggest problem there is beautiful, scenic, everything is beautiful. And I always see tourists coming in and they jump out and say, wow, when they see the Himalayas, and you can even see Everest from there. But then after some time, they say, oh, what can we do? So no activities, no entertainment, no involvement. So these young students who are aspiring to be going into hotels or going to travel agencies, well, I'm telling them that, well, think to be entrepreneurs and maybe come over to Nagarkot and open up a little shop and have mountain bikes, or take tourists for a walk, you know, and especially now with COVID, people don't want, this tour groups. There will be individuals. They'll be wanting to go for a walk with the family, with just 2 or 3 of them. So this is an opportunity. So I think people like us who are in the industry and these young worried students who have now felt, did I choose the right career? I think we need to, try and see how we can work together and create a win-win situation. So there is an opportunity.
Great. The next question, I think, is from Chen Feng Ko. Under the tourism umbrella, I guess this is for you, Ms. Nandini. Under the tourism umbrella, there are many subsectors such as hotels, restaurants, car rentals. Is there any unique or new well-being practice related to restaurants, food service in your country? I guess that's the handbook that you were showing us.
Yes, that has been there, and so we've published it. So, and if anybody would like to, have a look at it, it is posted on our website, welcomenepal.com. It's right at the front page, so you're most welcome to use it, to refer to it. And I would like to, again, going in the environmentally friendly practice that we are doing, we have decided to print minimum copies, and so everybody has to access it online, and it's absolutely useful for anybody. And right at the back, we have made a checklist format, so you don't even have to, you can read it online, but you just need to sort of print out 2 or 3 pages, which has the same thing in just at the back for reference. So if it's a hotel, they just need to print that out. So yes, of course, we have covered all the sectors of tourism in Nepal for that.
Okay, and Mr. Shakya, there's another question for you, because you own several hotels. What are your hotels doing to ensure well-being of customers as well as staff during this situation? So I guess people want to know what they can expect when they eventually come back to your hotels.
Yes, I think our biggest worry, being the owner of the hotels, we have to ensure both the staffs, employees, as well as the guests. And this 3 months of lockdown, we've been talking about nothing but these 2 safety factors. The staffs, we don't have a insurance for COVID. Now that's the biggest problem. Yes, they have a small, I think, a new COVID insurance, but there isn't a real COVID insurance that ensures, that they will be safe even if.
Hi, Karma. I think Mr. Gendresh froze.
Okay. Well, I think Eduardo has to go soon, so perhaps I could just ask you. The next question is for you anyway, Eduardo. With Europe opening up, were the local communities willing to accept tourists? That's a very good question.
You do indeed, and we see already, tourism happening in all over Europe. People, from the beginning of July, we moved from a stage of people willing to travel, from the second stage of people booking travel, which is obviously it's making us very happy, and also the all tourism entrepreneurs, because many of them were facing a really existential threat, not having liquidity at all, and this was affecting not only the small ones, but also the big airlines, big tour operators, and there's been a lot of issues, with vouchers here, airlines trying, to keep the liquidity or the money, the cash with them, because it was a matter of survival or not. So local communities are dying to see new tourists, if I may say, coming into their destinations and see. Many communities are so highly dependent. I mentioned that the European GDP, 10% of it is related to travel and tourism, but in some places in Europe it goes up to 20%. Talking about places like Greece, Spain, Italy, southern France, some other Mediterranean countries, and even northern countries like in Finland. There is also like a highly dependent on tourism in northern regions like Lapland and so on. So people are not looking to tourists as a risk, but again as an opportunity again, and understanding that tourists has to be also well educated and also well informed. I come back to the issue of transparency. You have to communicate. You have to tell and explain people what they can do, what they should not be doing, or what they definitely cannot do. And this is an exercise of give and take. It's not that only local communities. Local communities can be part of the solution too when it comes to explain people that it's safe to do some activities and they should avoid some others. I'm very, very positive and optimistic about this reopening, underlining the obviously the special circumstances, and this is not a normal tourism season, but definitely if we want to recover travel and tourism, we have to learn the lessons. We have to apply all the knowledge that we have. We have to keep optimistic around the development obviously of medical solutions, especially the deployment of a vaccine, and in the next months. There are already announcements of having a vaccine by the end of the year, which will be obviously amazing for 2021, and maybe reconsider what this year 2020 meant for all of us from a professional point of view, but also from a more personal point of view. And this is maybe I like to close with those words, that we all have a small or big responsibility when it comes to your own decisions. And, your own decision has a domino effect. If you transmit that to your closest circle, being your family, your friends, and so on, this runs very quick to all over the world. So, and it can arrive from Europe to Nepal, and from Nepal to many other places in the world. So yeah, let's be the change, as Gandhi used to say. Let's be you have to be the change that you want to see. So let's not preach water and drink wine, but do the opposite thing. Let's try to all if we're gonna preach water, let's all drinking water. And all over the world, not only in Europe or in Nepal, but trying to collaborate as much as we can. Again, I do believe in a spirit of cooperation, and we live in a planet which is very vulnerable. We've seen this crisis has demonstrated something, how vulnerable our industry is. As successful as it was 3 months ago, and it was considered unstoppable, and just increase in everything, and exponential wins and revenues and so on. Now we see that we are also very vulnerable, and this is a lesson that we have to learn, that nothing lasts forever, and if we want to survive, we need to adapt.
Thanks so much, Eduardo, and thanks Ms. Nandini and Yogendra Chakra as well for the great panel discussion. I think it was fantastic to put a positive spin on it, that we're looking at the positives that have come out of this crisis. I think from what we've been discussing, we've allowed the tourism industry in a lot of countries around the world to pause and rethink, and involve all the stakeholders and start again, and look at sustainability, low adventure, and regenerative tourism. I really like that concept. So let's hope when things start to reopen again, and we have the new normal with the SMS, Miss Nandini, things will be better. So I think I like the positive spin that we've managed to take away from this panel discussion. Thank you so much. I'll hand back to Paul now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carmen. And once again, thank you to our speakers. I know, Eduardo, it's fairly early, so thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Nandini and Yogendra. Yogendra, I know we had a little technical issues there, but thank you very much for joining us. And I also invite all the panelists, if you have some time, you can also join the meet and greet session, which is happening right after this. Chance for you to meet some of our attendees, or maybe answer some of the questions you weren't get to. So anybody is open to join. But I'll let you guys all leave now. If you have to leave, you can turn off your audio and video. But again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Carmen, for a fantastic session. And we'll see you next Tuesday for our last forum with Macau. So I'll see you then, Carmen. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
And so let me just do a quick wrap up here. As I said, wanted to thank the Nepal Tourism Board for being our destination partner this week, as well as the Ministry of Culture, Tourism, and Civil Aviation. Let's also thank our good friends at BBC, who've also, who have helping us for the past 4 weeks in terms of moderating the sessions, and also just through the years as being a partner with PATA for our various other events. Again, thank you to Eduardo and the European Travel Commission, and Yogendra at Ace Hotels. As I said, we have a meet and greet session. The link is available in the chat. It's taking place right after this. So feel free to join that session. I hope some of our speakers can join us. If not, we have some of our staff will be there, and I'm sure Mario will be there. So feel free to ask us any questions, or just network with each other. As some of the questions that have come up here it's really it's for us to come together and really sort of coordinate and discuss and figure out how we're going to get through this together to make a stronger, better, more resilient and responsible travel and tourism industry. And with that, I would say thank you once again to all of our speakers, and thank you also to all of our attendees for joining us this afternoon. I will see you at the meet and greet session happening right after this. Take care. Bye. Bye.